Sydney has a metro. It's called Sydney Metro. But what even are metros? I'm guessing you can imagine one. The likes of the London Underground or the New York Subway. They're metros. But what makes those systems so? To generalise, metros are electric railways that operate in their own exclusive right-of-way. They are often grade separated in tunnels or elevated right-of-ways. This allows them to arrive extremely frequently, allowing for massive capacities which can move more people than even multi-lane freeways. Some modern metros will also feature driverless trains which allow trains for up to every 2 minutes, and platform screen doors. All these features can be seen on Sydney's modern metro. Sydney's metro is one of the best examples of a modern Western metro system that is very accessible for all people. However, metros can differ in specifics. For example, in Sydney, stop spacing is especially wide, compared to other metros around the world. And that is certainly one criticism that is often brought up when talking about Sydney Metro, as it is a feature that not many other metros in the world share. But not every system that's called a metro is actually a metro. There are many systems that aren't metros at all, despite their name. In this video we will discuss some of these systems, why they aren't metros, and why they should not be called metro, as it gives a false impression of the actual service offering. To start with, we have the public transit agency in my home city of Adelaide. Adelaide Metro is a public transit agency responsible for the bus, train and tram services in the Adelaide metropolitan region. Does Adelaide have a metro at all? No, Adelaide Metro doesn't have any services that are anywhere near close to what a metro can get. The closest you could argue would be on some of the heavier used rail lines like the Seaford and Gola, but even they are nowhere close to being a metro. So what should Adelaide Metro be called then? A better and more modern name for the system might be Public Transport South Australia, which would not be lying about the actual nature of the service. Abbreviated to PTSA, similar to Melbourne's PTV, it would be an example of accurately describing the nature of what the system is and incorporating all aspects of the public transit system in Adelaide and widely South Australia. SA already has an example of this. SAPTA, the South Australian Public Transit Authority, is already in use, but is separate to the authority that Adelaide Metro has. To look at an infrastructure project instead, Brisbane Metro is an example of metro being used where it doesn't apply. Brisbane Metro is essentially a high-capacity bus system, and although it's much greater in its scale than other Australian cities, it definitely doesn't fit the mould of what a metro system actually is. While it does feature some similarities to a metro such as turn-up-and-go services, a completely dedicated right-of-way and platform screen doors, it is still missing the fundamental part of a metro service, that being a rail-based system with interlinked carriages making up trains. The vehicles being used on a Brisbane Metro are essentially just regular articulated buses, but longer. While it's certainly to be commended for its good BRT and fitting into the Brisbane transport environment, it certainly isn't a metro system and doesn't deserve that name at all. Yet another example of this is in Melbourne. The franchise that operates Melbourne's trains is called Metro Trains Melbourne. This is a pretty poor description of the actual operations throughout the network, as Melbourne's trains are largely just regular commuter systems that are typical throughout the rest of Australia. Another example of this is the new naming conventions for Melbourne's new trains. The High Capacity Metro Trains, or HCMT, is not very special compared to many other trains in Australia's fleet. While particularly long and high capacity, these trains aren't metro trains in the way we think about them. They share no resemblance with the new trains on use in Sydney's metro at all. These are still the heavy trains we have come to expect from Australia's commuter rail systems. I do want to note, however, I'm going to let the metro tunnel slide, as it kind of overall represents an actual metro in the service that it will offer through its very frequent service it will have when it opens in 2024 or 5. And to wrap up, we have another agency similar in vein to Adelaide's. Metro Tasmania is Tasmania's transport agency for an entire state. Metro Tasmania is worse than Adelaide Metro, as it doesn't even have a single rail line operating, as there are no trains or trams in passenger service in Tasmania. Metro Tasmania should probably be renamed a more sensible name to fit with its actual role of providing public transport for the state of Tasmania. After this whole video, what do I think is a good example of a naming system for a transit agency then? Very simply, Darwin Bus. Darwin Bus is an operator in the Northern Territory, and simply it operates services in the city of Darwin. The bus service in Darwin is pretty lackluster and could certainly be improved, but that is not the point of this video. Darwin Bus is a good branding mechanism that allows it to be recognisable to the people of Darwin. I do believe small bus systems like in Darwin should simply be named Name of City Bus. Obviously, for the cities that have rail transit, such a name wouldn't apply, but there are plenty of other examples similar to this which could easily be implemented. So essentially the conclusion in this video is don't call your system a metro if it's not a metro. It brings down systems that are actually metros and over-promises and under-delivers the actual services offered by a public transit agency. Australia and countries all over the world over-reliance on the term metro when talking about public transportation is just another example of how the term metro has been diluted. A metro deserves to be its own recognisable and special feature in public transportation, and although it doesn't have to be called a metro, systems like the London Underground are certainly not. The name metro really separates the best of the best from the mediocre. Thank you for watching this short dive into what actually constitutes a metro. If you liked this content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, and sticking around for more content.